everyone. I now call to order the 22nd meeting of the 61st session on February 27th, 2019 at 7:02 p.m. Moving into Section 2, roll call. When I say your name, please say present or here. Senator Akhter? Here. Senator Ale? Here. Senator Balderrama?
Here.
Senator Balzer?
Here.
Senator Berth?
Present.
Senator Bogle?
Here.
Senator Brumley?
Here.
Senator Enns?
Present.
Senator Fugit is excused. Senator Gibson?
Here.
Senator Huser?
Here.
Senator James?
Here.
Senator Khan?
Here.
Senator Kimball? Senator King?
Here.
Senator Laughlin?
Here.
Senator Martin?
Here.
Senator Maddock? Senator Morgan?
Present.
Senator Morgan? The other one? Senator Mounts?
Present.
Senator Newfield?
Here.
Senator Peel?
Here.
Senator Prakash? Senator Rivera?
Present.
Senator Rodriguez?
Present.
Senator Wang?
Here.
Senator Wappelhorst? Senator Webb is excused. Senator Wright?
Present.
And Senator Zacharias.
Here.
All right, quorum has been met with 23 in attendance. Simple majority is 12, two-thirds majority is 16, and two-thirds of the entire Senate is 20. We will now be moving into Section 3, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes of last week's meeting? Senator Balzer?
Yeah, on Section 7B, appointing academics appeals court members, all it said underneath it was just bill explained. I would personally appreciate actual description of the bill, as without the other information or whatever was explained during that bill, it makes it difficult on a read through the minutes to know what the bill was about. I still don't actually remember. It's not a whole paragraph or anything, but a description of that would be nice.
Andrew, can you cover that change all right? Already fixed and submitted. All right, so are there any objections to this correction? And are there any other corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are corrected, or are approved as corrected. We'll now move into Section 4, Public Forum. Public Forum, so just so that everyone is aware, because this is going to be a bit different from how we typically do things in meetings, but we're going to start having a little bit of a spiel that we give at the start of each public forum session that sort of sets the expectations for public forum and explains what public forum is. We figured that this will be helpful for people who are sitting in the gallery for the first time or people in the live stream who are watching at home for the first time. So again, moving into Section 4, Public Forum. Public Forum provides a chance for individuals to have the privilege of speaking before the Senate. This is a time for the association to listen to what the community has to say, and to that we offer our undivided respect and attention. I'd like to remind everyone that although we offer speakers the privilege to use this platform, the opinions of the speakers do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the association or the university. Lastly, in the essence of time, we do limit speeches in public forum to a length of 3 minutes unless the speaker has spoken to us about it ahead of time. That being said, is there anyone wishing to speak in public forum tonight? And I do believe we have Dr. Hall. And, yeah.
You can either come here or the side table.
Is this that one?
Yeah.
Okay. You know me, Terry Hall, you know our provost, acting president, Dr. Rick Muma. We're just coming from an LAS town hall meeting, and we're happy to spend some time with you and answer any questions that you might have. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, it's not my job.
As an LAS senator, kind of feel like since I was here, how did the town hall go? Was there any concerns amongst my constituents about the referendum?
Well, you have a number of your colleagues that were here. I think, there are probably 30 people there, maybe. I think in general the questions were pretty good. I think Dean Hippisley made a good argument for the priority of the biology labs and the psychology labs, and not only the impact for LAS, but for students all across the campus. And his estimate is that those two projects alone could impact, several thousand students. Because of the number of students who need to take biology, because of how large psychology is.
Question regarding like what you all were estimating the voter turnout to be for the vote next week.
I don't know how to estimate what it's going to be. I assume it might be the same level of turnout that we get for an SGA election, so maybe 1,200, 1,500 students.
Are there any other questions for the speaker? Senator Balderrama.
So the Honors College has already passed like the increased fee for their respective. One of the concerns like that I've heard from the honors student is that since they are already like having that fee, that set $50 fee, and then on top of that, they're gonna have if the referendum passes, they're gonna be tagged with 2 additional fees at once. So what are, I guess, some your guys' like, I don't know if you have any ideas or kind of statements to kind of alleviate those concerns, or how you might address that situation for those respective students?
Hi, Rick Muma here. I'll answer that question. So when the Honors College students were debating that with the dean of that college, Dr. Kimberly Ingber, they were aware that this was a possibility, that there was going to be a fee increase. This fee is $50 a semester for 5 years. So there's some language in there that would have to be reevaluated beyond that. That fee is a lot less than the $6 per credit hour because it's just a flat fee. We are in the process of raising more aid, particularly for the Honors College, and actually a donor gave some additional money that's going to be used for scholarships that will help offset some of those. I've talked to Dr. Ingber about how we might manage that going forward for particularly those students who this might be harmful to.
And Janet, the only thing I want to add to that is honor student decided to raise that fee to benefit the Honors College and themselves, right? And so the $6 fee for the referendum benefits all students on campus in one way, shape, or form. And so I understand that there might be some concern of, I'm going to do 50 and then I might have some more, but we have to look at one specific and then one is generalizable to the whole campus.
Senator Akhter.
So if there is any way there is no satisfactory number of students participate to voting, like 50% or less than 50%, so how can you go far?
So the question is, there is not an expectation for the percentage? There is not an expectation for the percentage. The state statute says that institutions that are going to build academic buildings must have a student referendum in order to raise the fees to be able to build those buildings. That's what the statute says, correct? It doesn't say what percentage of the students vote. It doesn't say any of those. It just says the referendum must take place. Okay?
Thank you.
Senator Mounts.
I also have a follow-up question. My first question is, how involved are you are both of you in the actual steering committee that is going through with Shock the Future?
We're both very involved. We meet weekly with the executive team, and we meet weekly with the steering committee. So we're both very involved with that.
But just to point out, our involvement is advisory to help answer some questions that students might have along the way. It's not to actually guide or direct or anything in that way. So it's meant to be a student advisory committee, and we try to hold true to that. Yes.
Senator Mounts had a follow-up question. Does anybody have any objections to him taking that? Okay, Senator Mounts.
So that being said, there was an article posted on the Sunflower back on or 2 days ago on the 25th with an anonymous committee member basically saying how everything was already settled. So how can you claim that this is student-led when it makes it seem like everyone on the steering committee had no input whatsoever what went into this actual referendum?
Yeah, so I've read that article too, and this one anonymous source, and there's also two other students who were interviewed for that article that basically said that's not really the case. I don't, and Terry can speak for herself, I don't think that everything was decided of how this was going to move forward. We really wanted their input, and there's a handful of students on there that have a lot of skill on how to move things forward, and they're doing that.
So it is true that the list of projects were decided. It is not true that the process by which and how we wanted to roll that out and how it was going to happen, that was not decided. And so one of the students I think even mentioned, I think it was Max that mentioned, it makes sense for the deans to be able to be involved in picking the projects that are most important to their colleges. And that's what our provost did. He worked with the deans to make sure they picked the kinds of projects that are most impactful for their colleges and for their students.
Senator Brumley.
So I know that there will be a second referendum if this one is to fail, going directly towards the business students. Do you guys know when that second referendum might be happening?
We don't.
We haven't talked about it. We're really hoping we don't have to do that.
It'll have to be this academic year. But we don't have a date or anything like that because we don't know what's going to happen with the first vote.
Any objections to Senator Brumley's follow-up?
So I know when the date was originally picked for the referendum, it was kept in mind to not affect like our student fees process or the SGA elections process, so it wouldn't like unfairly affect those two major events. Will those be kept in mind when doing the referendum? If need be.
If we have to do another referendum, it will be something that was going to take us time to get going, and so elections are the first week in April, so I'm not convinced it could happen before then anyway, so I think we're good.
Okay. Senator Morgan?
So what on the list of projects could happen without the referendum?
Some of the smaller ones, particularly the 24-hour study space, the renovation of that part, and the restrooms. I think that we could cobble together some money to do that right away. I mean, I'd like to see that one. It's a safety issue. I'd like to see that being dealt with as quickly as possible. That's going to mean that we're going to have to not do some other things, and that's going to funding primarily going to be coming from my office. So I'll have to shift some other priorities around to make that work.
Are there any other questions for the speakers at this time? Senator Martin?
So I know the whole thing with Henry and like failing, I don't know, like safety. That wouldn't be dealt with at all without money from the referendum, even though it's like a safety health issue.
So we're currently using some repair and rehabilitation money. We get $4.5 million a year roughly to deal with campus-wide repairs, maintenance kinds of things. And we're getting ready to do a project in Henryan. Henryan really needs a lot more than what we're proposing. We're going to use a combination of repair and rehabilitation money and new money if this passes, so we can jumpstart and get a head start on some of these projects, because there's many things that need to happen for Henry. So you will see soon, regardless of what happens with the referendum, some repair and rehabilitation money being used. I think it's roughly $700,000 on one little aspect of that facility.
So we'll probably be working on Henryan for years to come, right? It's not just going to be through this 3.5-year project, because it is going to continue to need to get some other things. But this really allows us to get the bulk of it done quickly, and then we can do some of those other things in smaller chunks.
Senator King?
I do know that one of the main concerns I've heard from engineering students is that they already pay the most out of the school and they don't want this $6 tacked on. But I've heard differing accounts of whether the engineering students would actually pay it or whether they wouldn't pay the $6. So
Now, this will be for all students.
yeah.
So they will pay this.
Senator Wang?
So I went to the town hall earlier and we talked about the $6 that was like, is it possible to take it off on certain time period? And then you said it will continue to be like added throughout the process and then it's not gonna be like taking off. So after the referendum process went off and then all the buildings are like getting all the projects like needed, is this $6, where the money gonna go to?
So it's a $6 per credit hour fee to raise about $1.8 million, which would be enough money to pay the yearly payment to support the bond issue that we'll have to, like a mortgage that we're going to take out. And that'll take 30 years. And so we will need that fee in place for at least 30 years. And we know in 30 years from now, neither one of us will be here. You all will be in charge of the university, some of you likely. We're hoping that fee will just stay in place because we know we're going to have other needs going forward.
Senator Ale?
For the referendum, if this comes out as a no, for a majority votes no, does any of the development, do they halt or would they be revisited through another means instead of increasing student fees, perhaps in the future?
So if it doesn't pass, say your question one more time.
If the referendum doesn't go through, if it's voted a majority as no, does that mean none of the developments would happen on campus except for the referendum that's to happen for the Barton School of Business? Does that mean the rest of the development will be revisited sometime in the future, or would they just be halted permanently?
So we will try to, so the question is, so we have the business school and we have these other projects. If the referendum doesn't pass, we'd have to move it on to the business students, and we're hoping that it would pass if it goes to the business students, although I think that's not a good idea that we would have to do that for one group of students. So the other projects that are part of the referendum, they will not be able to move forward in an expeditious kind of a way. We will try to do things as we can, like the 24-hour study space, but by and large, those aren't going to happen.
Senator Balzer?
A lot of my constituents have been expressing concerns over how this came about, mainly the expectation that the students must fund this due to the promises made towards donors about the new business building. In the future, do you plan on addressing like these sort of plans to students beforehand, engaging their opinion before promising their support on new projects?
We have been soliciting opinions from students for several years about the business school. You all may not know about that because you're new to the university, but that doesn't mean that those opinions aren't any important today than they were 6 years ago or whenever it was. So the business building has been discussed for many, many years, and it's been feedback has been sought from students, from faculty, from staff in the business school. Is there going to be opportunities in the future if we were to build another building to solicit feedback in a different way? I think we're open to that.
You know, Ethan, another challenge with this is the state of Kansas does not give any money toward buildings, especially academic buildings. You know, if you talk to your friends that might go to other schools in other states, Maryland, where I just came from, academic buildings were completely funded by the state. And so part of the challenge is this is what we're left with to be able to do if we're going to build new buildings. And so we'd love some help when you're at Higher Ed Day and you're lobbying about the support for higher education in the state of Kansas because it's been decreasing, that this is what we have to do.
Senator Balderrama?
So in terms of like the repair funding that you guys were talking about for Henry, what are some of the projects, or how is it like decided what is prioritized in terms of what those funds are used for, and like where does Heritage fall under that?
So there's certain guidelines that the state gives us every year when we receive this money, which is $4.6 million this fiscal year. So a lot of it's damage that's been done, like to a roof from a hailstorm. That's a high priority because it's leaking. Hubbard Hall is currently getting new windows. There's been cracks in those windows. They're not airtight. A few years ago, Linquist was the same thing. We replaced windows. So it's reprioritize on an annual basis. We're able to use it for those kinds of things. We're able to use it to make the campus more accessible, to update fire alarms, just kind of core maintenance kinds of issues, new sidewalks, new driveways, things that come up.
Senator James.
Senator Balzer brought up the donors and stuff, and I was wondering if this referendum doesn't pass and the second one for the business student also doesn't pass, do the donors get their money back, or is that ours to keep, or what is going to happen there?
Well, we have to figure out a way to build the business building. We prioritize this as an institution, that this is something that we need. We're not going to be promoting sending this back to donors, so we'll have to figure out a way to do that. If the business referendum doesn't pass, then we're going to have to think of other ways to do that. We can go out to donors again, but we pretty much feel that we're at the max of what our donors can give to this project. It'd be a challenge that we'd have to deal with, and we're hoping that that's not going to be the case.
Senator Brumley?
If there was a second referendum, would it only go to business majors, or would it include business minors as well?
It would be just like the referendum now is it'd be degree-seeking, student fee-paying business students. So degree-seeking students.
Majors then.
Yeah, majors. Not just a minor. If you're getting a minor, is that what you're talking about? If you're an LAS student.
Right. If you were like an education major, but you wanted your minor in like economics, would that person be also voting in the referendum, as they'd be using the building?
We'd have to actually go back and look at that because, students pay fees on all of the business courses. So I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't think that's decided.
Senator Wing.
So you're talking about the new business building, no matter what it's going to build, right? Like no matter what, like it passes or not, you're gonna find a way to build it. But I have a question about, because in the referendum that we're talking about, Clinton Hall will become a student service building. So the building is built, and then if the referendum didn't pass, is it the Clinton Hall still gonna be a student service building?
If we're going to find a way to build the business building, we're hoping that we can get student support for that. If that doesn't happen, which is not, it's not something that I want to think about, but might have to. And we stay in Clinton Hall. There's not going to be a student services center. We don't have another space for that.
Senator Martin.
How was it decided that you prioritize the business building over like someplace like Wilner, which isn't ADA compliant? Like, how was that decision made?
It's really based on what we know we can get from donors. So if you look at universities across the country, you'll see that there's sparkling new business buildings, engineering buildings, medical school buildings, law school buildings, and the reason why is because those are the individuals who have the resources to give. Unfortunately, that's not the case for a lot of other areas. But we also know that industry is very supportive of our business programs. They want to see our students trained in state-of-the-art facilities. Anytime you have investment in engineering buildings, business buildings, you also get investment that spreads out across the institution for more internships and those kinds of experiences for students. So it actually helps the entire campus. As you know, we're in the largest city in the state. This is where in this part of the state, this is where all the businesses are. And so our industry partners want a strong business school. And so that's part of the discussion that's been going on for a number of years.
Senator Balzer?
When you answered my last question about attaining student input, when you attained student input 4 to 6 years ago and used whatever your process was, which was voting or asking deans or getting specific subcommunities, I am curious to know what process you used. Why didn't you more recently ask the student body, like the same student body that's being asked to pay for this building, how they felt instead of relying on the 4 to 6 year old data from individuals who aren't actually paying?
Yeah, we've been asking students all the time about what their priorities are. We have an exit survey that everybody completes when they graduate that asks about facilities, technology, your perceptions of your program. And so we're looking at that survey every year that all students complete when they graduate. So we're collecting data in a number of ways. In the School of Business, it's accredited. They have advisory committees. They have students serving on those advisory committees that are giving that feedback. So that's how the feedback happens.
Senator Mounts?
On the surveys, how many students, when they graduate, actually take that survey? Because if it's like 10 students saying they want business building, obviously that is not a fair representation of the entire school. So how many students do take that exit survey?
So every student is required to take the exit survey. They can't graduate without doing it. It's required when you complete your application for degree. You can't complete that until you do the survey.
So there's really good data there.
Senator Morgan?
I really hate to be a Debbie Downer, but so if the referendum does fail, when will certain items like Henrian or Wilner be revisited in the future?
We'll make a decision after, if that were to happen. As I said before, we're always looking on how we make improvements with the resources that we have. It's just going to take a long time to do that for Henrian because there's so much in that facility. And as I said before, too, we're already using some repair and rehabilitation money right now. We're getting ready to start a project in there. So, I don't know. If we do nothing, if we don't have a referendum that passes, and we don't bring that up again for the students, that could take anywhere between 5, 6, 7, 8 years. It just depends, really, on how much money we have available. Fisk Hall, which is just right across the street, which is the oldest building on campus, that took 3 years to do that facility, and you can see how small it is compared to Henry.
Senator Martin?
So, to put it simply, like, fine arts doesn't have the donors that business and engineering obviously does. So, whenever we have buildings that are failing health and safety checks and aren't ADA compliant for a long time, where is the money coming from to deal with all of this? Since, I mean, the College of Fine Arts doesn't have it.
Yeah. So for ADA compliance, we can use some of that $4.6 million that we get allocated every year to do that. And I know this is going to be hard for you to swallow. You don't have to make any changes for ADA unless you make structural changes to the facility. And so we have to balance that in all of our facilities. This will happen. If this referendum passes, it will happen because we're going to be making structural changes to the facility. But we do have a small amount of money that's available in this repair and rehabilitation that we can use every year to make these improvements.
Senator Berth?
So stewardship has been a pretty hot topic for a lot of the individuals that I've talked to, my constituency as well as some others. And you've spoken to a lot of the reactive measures that you've taken to maintain some of these buildings, but I'm curious as to some of the proactive things that you have undertaken leading up to this referendum?
So, as Dr. Hall said earlier, we get zero money for new facilities and new construction. Zero. And we haven't gotten probably any state money for buildings since 1980, when Alberg Hall was built. So we're in a reactive mode because we don't get any money. The money we do have can just be used for repair and rehabilitation. A proactive approach that has happened is to raise $30 million for the business building. We've actually raised over $250 million in our capital campaign. 80 million of it's been for scholarships. So we are trying to be proactive, given our limitations. You know, we have $100 million in deferred maintenance projects that, on this campus alone, that increases every year. We try to prioritize those projects. We try to make the best of the money that we have to make improvements. I think we did a nice job with Fisk Hall. We finally made that building accessible by adding an elevator onto the back portion of it. It looks beautiful in how they've been able to incorporate that into the original structure of that building. But when we got in there, we realized that there was significant termite and water damage. So we actually had to gut the facility, and because of that, that's a maintenance issue, we were able to use that repair and rehabilitation funding to make those improvements. If you haven't been into Fisk Hall, you should go in it. It's awesome. And I think a good use of what we can do, it just takes a long time to do it. And we can't possibly make those improvements, the $100 million, that can't make a big dent in that, is the problem.
The only thing I'd like to add, Michael, is that at one point, the state of Kansas, our budget was 70% from the state. 30% was from tuition and fees. And then we're down to 20% of our budget comes from the state. And so as state funding has continually decreased, the question is, do we not hire faculty members, or do we fix stuff? And so that's why many campuses, as state funding for higher education has decreased, have these long lists of deferred maintenance because they kept putting off because they had to make choices on where the money had to go to.
I just want to point out, we can't take money away from personnel to build buildings or make new improvements. We can't use that source of revenue for that.
Senator Laughlin?
I had some concerns from English students and applied studies students, and how they kind of only have one building, like specifically English students only have Elliott on campus, really. And if there were any ways that they were going to be benefiting from this, because there's not a whole lot that talks about, like, here's how specifically this particular area of college in their LAS or respective areas, there's just not a whole lot that talks about how they can benefit from this. So how can I tell them that they're benefiting?
Well, for liberal arts and sciences, and just so you know that these projects that were put on the list came from the deans based on their feedback that they got from their faculty, staff, and students. And so for liberal arts and sciences, there was really only 2 projects that were significant amount that would require us to be part of this bonding initiative. That's the biology labs, and that's the psychology labs. 2 of the largest departments in the college. In terms of the biology labs, it's very impactful because over 1,000 students actually use those labs because they have to have biology for a prerequisite, if they're a health profession student or whatever, and similar for psychology. There's many other projects that were on the list, but they're like $10,000 or $5,000, and we can figure out ways to do that. It's like to improve audiovisual equipment, and there's some other little bit higher price things, but we still think we can handle those, and we'll do that. You all need to understand that we're doing all kinds of things with the resources that we currently have that are not coming from your fees. I'm buying furniture for various different departments that need new furniture. And, Fisk Hall was an example. The student study area, there wasn't any money available to outfit that particular area, so my office purchased that. And I'll continue to do that as resources are available and under my responsibility. So the dean of the college, with help from the department chairs in liberal arts and sciences, using that as an example, prioritized those projects, and the top two were these ones, and they thought that those were most impactful for their college.
And then, Maddie, the thing I'd like to add is those students who say, why is houses benefiting me? Talk about how when Clinton Hall is renovated and it becomes a student services building, right? That the Shocker Support Locker can move in there, that our Veterans Center can move in there, we think. The graduate school will have a home. Disability services will move in there. Testing will move in there. Supplemental instruction, student success. Disability services are all gonna move in there. And so I believe, that's the next highest funded project on that list. And I believe all students are going to benefit from those centralized resources in that space, that it may not be for their major, but it's going to be for their overall experiences.
Are there any objections to Senator Laughlin's follow-up? All right, go ahead.
The, I guess, environmentalists and also I'm curious about how we are furnishing these, and then what materials, specifics are kind of hard to determine, but are we doing it in a way that's sustainable, and are we looking at the things that we already have, and then when we get rid of them, what are we doing with them, and are we looking at the things that we already have and figuring out how we could maybe repurpose them or use them still?
Yeah, we're always looking at that.
Okay.
I just want to let you know, all these projects that we're improving or wanting to make improvements in, the equipment that's in there is not usable. I mean, it shouldn't continue to be used at the university. An example of how we did try to come up with an efficiency is the psychology lab and the play therapy lab, and combining those in a shared space.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an efficiency. And so we tried to think about all those kinds of things when we were putting the plan together.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator Mounts.
So going back to the deferred budget, or for infrastructure and things like that, or for repairs, are the other, how has this affected other universities in Kansas? Are their deferred budgets as large as ours?
Yep. So the state of the 6 regent schools has $1 billion in deferred maintenance. We have $100 million. KU has, I don't know the exact amount, but it's proportionate to the size. It's probably around 400 million, 300 million. They're older universities. They've been around 50 years longer than we have, K-State, KU. So they're actually in much worse shape than we are. Our university, most of the buildings that you see here were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Most of the original buildings at KU were built in the early 1900s, 1800s.
Senator James.
So when Maddie or Senator Laughlin asked about, okay, never mind. You were saying about that. Tell these people that aren't really sold on the fact that they're paying for future stuff, that all these new renovations, they're going to be very useful. A lot of people I talk to that are voting against this still aren't sold on the fact that they're paying for stuff that they will never use. So what, as a senator, can I tell them about this?
So have you thought about thanking the students who voted for this building? I mean, so it was a referendum. It was through the student fee process, a survey that was done that supported this, that made for the increase in student fees so that this building could be built. And so students then started paying the money, $6 a credit hour, which is basically what this next fee is going to be, because they wanted to pay it forward, even though they weren't going to benefit. And that's part of what leadership is, and that's part about, if you care about this place, some of you are going to see a number of these improvements, some of you won't. But do you believe that this is part of what the university should have, right? That we want you to be proud of this place. We want you to bring your kids back to this place and be able to see that this was stuff that was started while we were there.
Senator Martin.
And we want you to get a graduate degree here, master's, doctorate.
Yeah, we have a new higher education program we're starting.
With the money being good for buildings built before 2007, how do we plan to upkeep the buildings that are being built in all of these renovations if we can't use that fund?
She's right. There's a stopgap that when we can't use the R&R money. Yeah. And what I don't know is what maybe you know this, Provost, in that, so we're redoing some buildings. Does that take them off the list? Because that's something that I don't know that we can answer.
Well, all these projects are in really old buildings. And so even if we, for instance, the biology lab, we'll make those improvements, it's not going to take that facility offline because we'll have other improvements that we need to make. So for any of these projects, I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Does anyone else have questions for our speakers? Senator Mounts?
So another thing that I know is on at least some students' mind is like tuition and things like that, because obviously schools raise their tuition rates every single year because they do have to cover costs and inflation and things like that. Is there a projected, do you have any what is your projected recommendation for tuition increase to KBOR in this next whenever you present it next?
So it'll if we're allowed to bring a proposal forward to the Board of Regents, we have been trying to stick between 2 and 2.5% increase. So it'd be somewhere along those lines.
Senator Morgan?
So would that be projected to go up should the referendum fail?
Would
No, we wouldn't raise tuition higher because of
yeah. So, yeah. We can't use tuition to do any of these other things. We have to have this separate fee for building improvements.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you all. Go to wichita.edu, shock the future if you need more information about this.
So you'll get your email Monday morning, 8-ish. You know, Nancy, being as efficient she is, she's got a batch out, get the email sent out in batches. It might take between 8:15 and 8:30 for all the 12,000 and some emails to go out. We will have polling stations. You all know where my office is. If you continue to have questions or continue to hear concerns from people, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, okay? Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in public forum tonight? All right, seeing none, we will now move into Section 5, Officer Reports. The chair now Item A, the chair now recognizes President Rowell for the reading of their report.
I'm so sorry that you guys are going to have to read. You guys are going to have to read and listen to my report because there's no way for me to do this outside of reading it off of this. So I had a meeting with Provost Muma this week. We discussed the upcoming KBOR meeting in March, just what that was going to look like schedule-wise, because I've never been to a KBOR meeting. And then he also gave me a brief Shock the Future update. We talked a little bit about the video that we did last week regarding questions with me and Matt and Provost Muma. And then we also talked about Gen Ed revision. I also had a meeting last week, speaking of Gen Ed, with the Gen Ed Revision Committee. This committee sent out the survey to faculty and select members of staff, so staff members that are a part of the advising staff. And we start the initial proposal for the new Gen Ed program next week. So the consensus is a reduction in credit hours, but we're still staying with the same goals and probably the same structure. So if you guys could talk with your constituents over what they think should be happening with Gen Ed, how many credits should be cut. The minimum is we have to have 30 credit hours for Gen Ed. Currently, Gen Ed is at 42 credit hours, so we have about 12 credits to play with on that. So if you guys could talk to your constituents and let me know, that would be great. I also had a meeting with academics regarding Gen Ed. I'll be encouraging them to make a student recommendation that aligns with the current structure of Gen Ed. That was already voted in the committee to maintain.
and to analyze different gen ed structures at peer and aspirational schools. So Isaac's taking care of that. So thank you, Academics Committee. And then I also had a meeting with the committee chairs. I wrote this before I met with Isaac. I had a meeting with him as well to see what their plans are for the rest of the semester and to see how they are going to be using their remaining budgets. It seems like everyone's pretty on track with that, so looking forward to seeing what all our committees accomplish this semester. The ad hoc committee this week went really well. The Senate reps are writing the constitutional changes now, and we will be putting them on the floor next week. Hopefully the bylaw changes will be done by next week as well, but if not, it's not as much as a concern. The constitutional changes have to be passed by the 22nd in order to be put on the ballot, so that's why we're working so quickly on this. In order for those constitutional changes to be made, they have to have a vote from the entire student body through the election process. So if we don't get the bylaws done by then we'll be moving forward with those after March 22nd. I have a PUP board meeting this week. I think they will be reviewing some of the Sunflowers policies regarding recommendations that Christine Taylor made based on Title IX issues. And then I also have a conference call with the rest of the region's presidents this week, and I'll update you all with the content of the call next week. This is kind of both committee related. I had a call from Dan Close from the communications department, and he leads, I think, the academic appeals committee. They're still looking for a graduate representative for that, so our graduate reps, if you guys could look into serving on that committee or finding someone that you know who would be interested in serving on that appeals court, that would be really helpful. We do have, he said that a good amount of appeals do come from graduate students, and it's really important to have student input on that committee because, you know, these are decisions that are being made about people's academic status. And then last update from K. Monk Morgan, please sign up for activation team meetings. She gave me a link. Everyone's looking at Cameron. But she gave me a link for you guys to sign up, so I will put that in the Discord after the meeting. But if you guys could attend those, it seems like they're not getting a lot of student involvement, and that is why we are here, to be the hands and feet of the student body. So if you guys could sign up for one of those activation team meetings, that would be great. With that, I'll take any questions if there are any.
Point of personal privilege. Could you make your stuff bigger? Yeah, I just want to type out the stuff. Thank you.
Are there any questions, Senator Brumley?
Regarding your request that we talk to our constituents about credit hour changes, is that in regards to classes that should count for gen eds, or is that classes that we no longer want to be required?
So it's not really specific classes, it's more like the tiers. So right now we have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. There's 4 classes that are in Tier 1. I don't think those are going to be going anywhere. Then there's 7 courses in Tier 3 that are divided between fine arts, humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences. And then you have your Tier 3 with further study and issues and perspectives. So what the recommendation would be looking at, do we cut Tier 3? Is there less less courses? So say right now we have 2 humanities courses. Do you cut one of those humanities courses and, you know, completely cut that out, or cut a fine arts course, or cut a natural science course? It's looking at those categories rather than, well, I don't want to take History 132. You know, it's not that specific course. It's not taking courses off the gen ed list. It's taking categories out. Yep.
Senator Rivera?
Yeah, so regarding your pub board meeting this week, you said that Christine Taylor made some recommendations about some policy changes that Sunflower could make, or should make, I don't know. Is there a specific reason why she made those recommendations, or is it just like an outdated, we want to look at this
So kind of both. There was like an incident that there was like some sort of lawsuit that was brought against the Sunflower regarding hiring policies, and one of the complaints was it was gender-based discrimination. That wasn't I think, and I don't know the complete specifics on it, so I'm not going to go like too much into detail. That wasn't the case, and Christine ruled that it wasn't a policy violation, but she did recommend some changes in that policy, one of them being that the same person can't serve as the same position for more than a year, or they can't serve on the editorial staff for more than a year. So we're looking at some of those to see if those policy changes should be made or not.
Senator Wayne?
I have a question about the whole Janet thing. I noticed that this thing has been going for a while, and is there a timeline that we're following, or when's it going to be effective? Because I know this thing since like last year, and then they say it's going to be effective this year, and then now it's still on it, so I'm kind of confused.
Okay, so there has to be a policy recommendation that the entire faculty senate and then probably the entire faculty vote on it, I think by sometime in April. Once that's approved, I'm not sure if it would go into effect next year or if it would be slowly implemented. I haven't gotten any input from that. The committee itself has met since June, May or June of last year, so it hasn't been going on for more than a year, but they are hoping to get that recommendation in by the spring so that the faculty can vote on it, and then I definitely can ask if it would be implemented the next year or if it would kind of have a gap year. I'm not sure if students who are currently under the gen ed structure for graduation, if that would change for them. That's something that I can also ask as well.
Senator Meltz?
In relations to the K-Board meeting you're having in March, do you have like a specific like agenda that you're going to be talking about, or is that still kind of like you're not really sure yet?
So K-Board meetings are kind of interesting in the fact that like there's certain administration members that go, as well as legislators and the regents, and then student body presidents and whoever goes with them. I'm not sure, like, I know there's subcommittees to where, I think Keenan served on, what was it, diversity? Academics. So there's not like a platform, I don't think, where I can go and like talk about what I want to see, perhaps. But I know I'll be able to introduce myself and introduce WSU to the entirety of the regents. But other than that, I don't really know the specifics on that.
Are there any other questions for the President's report? All right, seeing none, we will now move into item B, the Interim Vice President's report. And I'll actually start mine off just because as you all were talking about KBOR, I actually had something that I thought about. It is not unheard of for senators to attend KBOR with the President. I think we had Senator Balzer go at one point. So if that's something that you're interested in, you want to maybe just, even if you don't have something that you specifically want to do, but you just want to use it as like an educational experience to sort of figure out what KBOR looks like, that's something that you should contact us about if that's something that you want to do, and that way we can get you logistically figured out there. But as for my report itself, so I attended the Student Fees Committee training. I also sent out new legislation templates. So those are templates that are just like, templates for bills and resolutions that have been changed to reflect the change in the association's executive officers. I've been trying to stay up to date on like legislative initiatives that I've seen from you all. And I've sent emails out to people or had conversations with people that I've had new information on regarding whatever it is that they were working on. I got the senator handbooks. A lot of you already had those, but there are some new senators who didn't have those, and I got the up-to-date versions of the senator handbooks for you all. If you are a senator who does not have the like up-to-date complete senator handbook, I have a couple extra copies, and we can also print them off. So if you're wanting one, just let us know. I met, Shelby already talked about this, but I was part of the meeting with committee chairs to discuss their progress on things and what they were wanting to do for the rest of the semester. So as for last week's meeting, where we had a bit of a conundrum with Robert's Rules, I said that I would study Robert's Rules and that I would make sure to be focused on that and have that as something that I'm working on, and that's something that I've actually did. There were So there were 3 takeaways that I got that were specifically related to questions that I know senators had that I wanted to help you all out with. So the first is that it had been asked if we could have a senator make a motion to request a specific kind of vote, and I was like, well, I mean, there's this, but otherwise, no. I was wrong. Robert's Rules says a member can move that a vote be taken A, by ballot, B, by roll call, or C, by standing vote. And, it goes more into detail on all of that, but that's something that I wanted you all to be aware of. The next thing is regarding to postpone indefinitely, because there was a lot of questions and confusions about the connotations of that motion. Postpone indefinitely is basically for cases that you don't want to pass the motion, but you also don't want to fail the motion because that has a negative connotation to it as well. So that the idea is that you're not officially saying yes or no, you're just not making a vote. So that's what that motion does. And then finally, objection to the consideration of the question, because there was what's the difference between objection to the consideration of the question and postpone indefinitely? So that motion is basically used at the beginning, before debate even happens. We're not even considering this, and that has a higher vote than postpone indefinitely, but that's what that motion is for. So that's it for Robert's Rules. As far as the ad hoc committee I felt went really well. We established the goals of what we kind of want to be working on contextually with the changes that we're trying to make in this. So one thing that we want is we want well-defined procedures for the succession, both temporary and permanent, of the association's officers. There are some procedures, but when we actually got around to using them, we saw that there was a lot lacking in terms of well, how do we do this? How do we do that? What happens if this occurs? There isn't a whole lot, so we want those to be fleshed out and fully realized in our changes. The other thing that we want to make is we want to ensure that the Student Senate serves as its own independent branch that is on an equal level with the executive branch rather than it being secondary to the executive branch. And so, there are things that we're working on to ensure that this is possible, but one of the key takeaways that we've been talking about is making it so that Senate resolutions, which are an expression of the will or intent of the Senate, those resolutions shouldn't be able to be vetoed by the president, because that doesn't make any sense. It's a Senate resolution, not the president's opinion. So, for example, the resolution that was talking about going to be passed a couple weeks ago, it would have been kind of an awkward situation because we can't pass that resolution without the president's signature. That resolution would have just stayed around for 30 days. So that's kind of what's inspiring some of these changes. And then the final thing that we're working on is that the Constitution and the bylaws serve distinct purposes in what they do. Right now they're kind of overlapping a lot in their ideas. What we would like to see is that the Constitution sets up the association and it defines what everything is. But the bylaws is for procedural things. Right now we see a lot of situations where there are procedural things in the Constitution that don't need to be in the Constitution, and this is bad for us as an association because it makes it hard for us to make changes to procedural things when we notice that they're not working very well because they're locked behind the rigidity of a constitutional amendment being required to change them. And so regarding the last of those points with regards to the Constitution and the bylaws, Senator Mounts was someone who was wanting to work on the committee, but he wasn't able to because of scheduling conflicts. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I've volunteered to take this last part. Let's work on it together. So that's something that he and I will be doing, and then reporting that back to the committee, and we'll let you know how that all goes. And then the last thing that I have today is R-61-009, which was written by Senators Brumley and Rivera. That was where we invited Laura Kelly to speak here, and that was something that I'm just going to be honest with you guys, I completely dropped the ball there and didn't send it out, and I really should have. So I'm going to be sending that out. Worst case scenario, she wants to come, but the 62nd session will have to see her in Senate instead of the 61st session. And that's really unfortunate, but I'm going to do the best that I can to make sure that that happens. And I apologize for letting that fall through the cracks on top of a bunch of other stuff. That being said, are there any questions for the Vice President's report at this time? Senator Mouse.
Could you repeat the 3 voting procedures that we can call?
So the three voting procedures that a member can move, and this is a direct quote from Robert's Rules, a member can move that a vote be taken A, by ballot, B, by roll call, or C, by counted standing vote. And you can also refer to the exact text, since I know that you have your own Robert's Rules. It is on page 71 of the book. All right, are there any other questions? Seeing none, we will now move into item C, the Treasurer's Report. The Chair now recognizes Treasurer Yang for the reading of their report.
Okay, so 5 things. First, ShockerSync budgeting platform has been changed. So if you all are somewhat familiar with it, you used to scroll down and click on campus links. But now that is no longer a part of ShockerSync, I guess. It's been moved to Engage. I'm working on updating the website and stuff like that, on showing people how to access their budget requests. But if you have any questions on that, all you have to do is, if you can picture ShockerSync in your mind, on the top right section, there should be like a little spot for you to access your own account. So you would click that and then slowly navigate to finances, because there are a few more tabs, but the rest of it, if you click around, it should make sense. Second, it doesn't really totally matter. The first point doesn't really completely matter because 2, all student funding is gone. So A, this means no more individual and org funding. I know that sounds a little bit daunting, but this is a good thing. It means that all $60,000 for organizations and individuals have been allocated to organizations and individuals. So it means that people have been using this money, that they're turning in their receipts, and that we've spread the word about it, and they've taken this opportunity. B, I'd like to give a shout out to the Budget and Finance Committee for working really, really hard. I think overall we've heard about 50 or so individuals, and then I think like 20 to 30 organizations. And every single week the Budget and Finance Committee shows up and listens to these people for all of you to vote on the funding bill. So thank you so much to the Budget and Finance Committee. Number 3, even though there is no more org funding, aux funding is still an option. So if you have if you have any organizations saying like, oh man, I missed out on my opportunity, you can still refer them to auxiliary funding. The process takes a little bit longer because typically we meet on the last 2 Wednesdays of every single month. However, I'm looking at replacing Budget and Finance Committee meetings with aux funding meetings, which means that we'll be doing auxiliary funding meetings potentially every single Wednesday. The auxiliary funding process is a little bit longer, so meetings for one group typically last 30 minutes rather than 10 minutes. So we'll have to look at everyone that's in the auxiliary funding committee schedule to see if we can do that. However, that's still an option, so please offer that out to your organizations. Number 4, so we had the student fees meeting today, and hopefully I'll be working with Andrew within, by the end of the week, we'll have a simple graphic out that lets you know who is your representative for the committee, so you all know who's your fine arts representative and who's your at-large representative. And it'll include an email so that if you need to speak to your constituents or your constituents would like to talk to members on that committee, they can just simply send them an email. And we'll also have more graphics on Facebook, so we'll have event pages because hearings are open, so you can invite all your constituents to those meetings so that they can be there for that, and we'll have just different graphics out. 5th, and finally, now that there is no more student funding, and now that we could potentially be doing more aux funding, another thing that I want the Budget and Finance Committee to work towards is reviewing the journal, specifically about like statute 27, just to flex on Matt, pages 78 through 83. Those are the pages that deal with org funding and individual funding. So we're looking at rules. Do they seem kind of arbitrary? Does this need to be updated because, you know, conferences have evolved, have organization needs evolved? We're going to be looking specifically at those pages. So if you know of any orgs or individuals that felt like they have been wronged by student funding somehow, please like reach out to them and give their recommendations to me.
Are there any questions? Senator James?
What's the difference between the auxiliary funding and the organizational funding?
Right, so that's a good question. The organization funding is specifically outlined in the SGA journal, and it's $30,000 that we offer every single year to organizations. There are specific requirements, so you can't buy food unless food is like the main purpose of the event. If your event in any way raises funds for anything, then
your event is automatically disqualified. You're only allowed to request up to $500 for operational funds. You're only allowed a maximum of 2,000 funds a year. So there are different requirements that the journal sets out that we can't really change at this point. However, for auxiliary funding, that funding is a lot more flexible. Your RSOs are allowed up to $3,000, and then student fees funded groups are allowed up to $5,000. So for student fees funded groups, they can't touch org funding, but they can try for aux funding. Overall, auxiliary funding is a little bit more, the like hearing is a little bit more intense. We ask more questions. We get down to like the nitty gritty of things. Not saying that org funding doesn't, but there are just a lot more eyes on auxiliary funding requests. And there are a lot less restrictions, which is why we have to ask harder questions.
Senator Zacharias.
So when you say that all of the funding, student funding is gone, is this funding in our schedule tonight the last, or will we be seeing more in upcoming Senate meetings?
No, so next week should be the last individual and organization funding bills because we listened to organizations and individuals this week. So assuming that they get passed completely, that means that all of the fundings will be exhausted if, you know, they upload all their receipts and stuff like that.
Are there any other questions for the Treasurer's report? All right, seeing none, we will now move into Section 6, Other Reports. Item A, the Chair now recognizes Director of Public Relations Martin for the reading of their report.
Y'all with your questions tonight. Wow. Scholarship Committee. Thank you to Senators Akhtar and Huser for volunteering to be on that committee. We'll be assuming that it's passed tonight, we'll be scheduling a meeting next week to get that out of the way. And on the topic of scholarships, we have only had one qualified applicant who's passed everything for the Radigan Leadership Scholarship. So we will we'll definitely be reopening that scholarship as soon as possible. And finally, just to second Stella, student fees graphics are underway. Please share these. Our policy with student fees is transparency, which, as defined in communication, is the public dissemination of concise, easily understandable information. So we're really going for that this year. I've got a few things underway. For that, I'll be open to questions.
Are there any questions for the DPR's report? Senator Laughlin.
Do you know when you guys will be opening that scholarship back up, approximately?
Haven't set a date yet.
Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will now move into item B. The Chair now recognizes Student Advocate Miller for the reading of their report.
Hello, everyone. So, open discussion events. So we had two of them. The first one was on February 19th, and the second one was today. The first one had a better turnout than today's. We had about 10 to 15 people, and we had a couple of random students show up to the first one. Lots of good questions. And then today, sadly, we didn't really have a whole lot of students show up. It was mostly everyone who was already in the SGA office, but we still had good conversations, so I think overall those went well. Legal advice was last week, sorry. We did not have any students attend. So I will be working with Christine Campbell, that's the attorney that I work with when setting up this event/service, to see if there's a different or better way that we can still provide this service, because I think it's really good for the student population. Because I have students ask for legal advice, but it's always whenever we don't have these events or they just happened. And then lastly, Food for Fines. It's next week, March 4th through 8th. It's on Facebook. I posted the graphic in the Discord. Please share that. I really hope that students will donate. So questions.
Are there any questions for the Student Advocate's report?
I know for the last food for fines, we talked about we got like an obscene amount of like canned vegetables. So is there any like restrictions on please keep it to non-perishables that are in a different category? Like just to make sure like we have enough of everything. I didn't know if we had any limits on that.
Yeah, so the form details, it's on my website, it details all of the acceptable donations, which are things like drinks, whether that's Gatorade, water, juice, or like the flavor packets. We accept fruit, granola bars, pasta sauces, and it does say on the form, no ramen, no mac and cheese, and no vegetables. So if anybody asks, no ramen, no mac and cheese, no canned vegetables. Please and thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will now move into item C. The chair now recognizes Academics Chair Rivera for the reading of their report.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great week. So in committee today, we talked about Strength Quest, so I ended up meeting with Kennedy Rogers. I think that was on Friday. We talked about some of the information about like student involvement's proposal to what it would look like for WSU to become a strengths-based campus. And then she showed me some data about just different things that they've been able to collect from the places that they've already put Strengths Quest into, so like first-year seminars. There's a whole list of other things as well. That's the only one I remember, though. So she showed me some of that data and just showed me what the breakdown of like the costs of Strengths Quest would be and just kind of things like that. And I have that information to share if anyone would like that proposal. I can send it to you. Just let me know after meeting or sometime. As President Rao mentioned, she came to committee today. We talked about Gen Ed and specifically looking for student input. Earlier today when we met, we talked about how it's probably not feasible to get another student survey out in the amount of time we have left, and then that survey back and then analyzed. So she's really looking at academics being the student input in that recommendation, which is works just as well because that's what we're senators, so we're supposed to be voices for our constituents as well. So if anybody would like to have any input in that recommendation, please reach out to me, talk to your committee chair, and talk about maybe coming to academics. Whatever you'd like to do, we're looking for student input. Unfortunately, though, that recommendation might not come out as soon as we wanted to. The committee was a little confused after we talked about what exactly we were looking for. So President Rao and I will continue working with that. We're going to have people, hopefully have some of the people on the Gen Ed Revision Committee come in and talk to academics here in the future. So moving forward, we're going to have a couple of those things going on. So not quite a recommendation just yet, but we're definitely working on that. And then the Academic Appeals Court met today and saw another case. Unfortunately, I wasn't there, but I know that the committee deliberated, and they will have a decision soon, and I will hear the decision soon. And then, as President Rao mentioned in her report, most of the cases, in fact, all of the cases that I've seen while I've been on the court have come from graduate students. So if anybody knows graduate students who would like to be a part of that committee, it might be important to have graduate students because as an undergrad, I know what graduate students have to deal with, right? So hopefully we can get some grad students on there because I think we're expecting about 4 more cases this semester. So hopefully soon we'll be able to get more grad students on there to have their input. And then finally, I don't know exactly if this is a part of decorum, and I don't know if I see Senator Webb. Oh, well, Senator Webb, I was going to congratulate him because he got an internship this summer to work at NASA, which is it's a great deal. I definitely am not smart enough to go work for NASA. So if you see Lucas anywhere, congratulate him. It's a big deal. And I know that we're all proud of him, specifically myself because he's in my committee. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Are there any questions for the chair's report? All right. Seeing none, we will now move into item D. The chair now recognizes Diversity Task Force Chair Brumley for the reading of their report.
Okay, so I have 3 things to talk about today. The first would being that we have started the itinerary or the itinerary process for the Inspire dinner. If you were in last session, you remember that we had that right before we had student fees, I believe. So we're looking at like the last week of March, first 2 weeks of April as kind of our like ideal time. Basically, it would be bringing maybe 4 upperclassmen from each USC 259 high school that show leadership potential and fall into that underserved category, and explaining the importance of not only being on the collegiate campus but being involved on it, and saying like you can get to college and when you get here you can thrive. We know that students who are involved are going to maybe have better grades, they're going to stay for longer, the retention really shows, because if you have something you care about on the campus, you're more likely to stay on this campus. It's really like pushing that. I know last year was kind of like eat dinner with the senators, get to know them. We'd like for those conversations to be a little bit more focused, so you guys know what you should be talking about with them, what the goal and purpose of these events are, so that way you're not like, hi, I'm Anicia, I don't know, what do you want to know about me? It should be a productive conversation where you know that you're supposed to be inspiring these kids. So with that, I'm going to bring up Senator Webb as well. He's a rock star this week. He spoke with me about some concerns he had about the diversity within scholars on this campus. Specifically, I won't get into specifics, because there's kind of a few where I was like, well, like, you know, we don't really see the people who win being in that under-supported category. And when he went to his constituency about it, it wasn't so much that there was something, you know, wrong with the selections committee. It was more that there just was not a diverse pool that they were getting. So if you get a group of 20 white boys, then your winners are going to be white boys. That's just what they have to work with. So what can we do to be proactive to make sure that pool is being as diverse as possible? So the conversation kind of went to how can Inspire be a little bit more focused on that leadership aspect, like going to high schools and say, once you get to college or once you're in that senior level, make sure you're applying for those scholarships like the Gore, Barton, Koch, Wallace, all of those. You should be applying for them, and you should also, you know, be taking a stand when you get to campus. Join ADI, join SGA, be a part of your Black Student Union, those types of things. So those are some conversations I'll be having in DTF to make sure that Inspire is doing the good work and doing something different than other initiatives, because we don't want anyone to feel obsolete or, well, we already talked to that group, so how is it different from this one, that type of thing. Lastly, we had our committee chair meeting today with President Rowell and interim President Madden. I thought that was pretty productive, just getting everyone on track and making sure that we understand that, you know, we do have about 6 weeks left in this session. So that's not just being lame duck. That's not like, okay, we have one big thing to do left. That means getting work done. Let's have a plan for that work, and let's make sure we're getting it done in time. So I hope all of you have that same mindset as well. With that, I have nothing else, and I will stand for questions.
Are there any questions for the chair's report? All right, seeing none, we will now move into item B. The chair now recognizes Safety and Student Services Chair Enns for the reading of their report.
Okay, hi everybody, last report. So we had a very short and sweet committee meeting today, and we just talked about, you know, those really like 1 or 2 things that we're going to focus on for the rest of the session that we're going to do very well. So the first one being working on that tobacco legislation that I mentioned to you all last week. So we're going to be looking into those policies, and I have my committee looking at, you know, forming that piece of legislation throughout the week. So hopefully by, you know, next week or the week after, we are going to have that ready for you on the floor. So look out for that. I will probably release that on Discord before then, so that way you all can look at it, you know, revise it yourselves, just involve you all in that process too. We are going to be focusing on tabling as well, specifically about vaping and, you know, just looking at those pieces of the tobacco policy that people are a little more confused about. And so we're just going to focus on informing the student body of that, as well as working with everyone that we met with last week on that policy and where they are, administration-wise. Since we're the students working on it, we also have other groups. So checking in with them. The second thing is coffee with a cop. So we talked about this today, when we would have it, what that would look like, and what we decided was that we want to have coffee with a cop the week after spring break. We still need to talk with the police department about that, but that was just a good time that we were thinking that would happen, just based around, like people will be back in that final stretch, but there's still going to be some time left on campus, so there will still be people on campus to talk with them. We were also thinking about, making this more of a regular thing. So up until this point, Coffee with a Cop has been something that the Safety and Student Services Chair has had to schedule on their own, just really make their own event each time. And so I was talking with Senator Bogle about how they have basically Coffee with a Cop every week in the Veterans Center. And so they just know that a cop is going to show up in the Veterans Center like once a week, talk with them, chat with them, and then that's like a weekly thing. It's random, so they don't really know when they're going to show up, and that's a little different than this, since this is supposed to be like a campus-wide event. And so we don't have, a small amount of people in one space, and they're guaranteed to be there, So we were thinking of maybe talking with Starbucks and partnering with them, and maybe seeing like if we could do like a monthly thing downstairs. That would go through probably the next session, but that would be something that I would put in my transition guide, maybe talk to Starbucks about, and just see if we can get some of these things rolling that wouldn't have to be self-started each session by the committee chairs, so that way we have some consistency between sessions. And that's something that I've seen being here for 4 years and being an SGA and involved a lot. Consistency is really great. So that's what we're working on, doing our stuff well, and I will take questions.
Are there any questions, Senator Brumley?
Okay. So I know we have like the police academy on campus, and I know that's not like the university police, but it's just like an entity on campus that not a lot of people know about, but still kind of falls in that category. And I know there's a bunch of like eager young recruits in there. Shameless plug, one of them's my brother. But like, I think that'd be really interesting if we found a way to get them like kind of involved with it as well. I think you could get some like maybe more relatable people in there as well. Yeah. I mean, you have like a 22-year-old who like thinks like the campus is very cool and talks about like their safety concerns and like what that process is like, because I feel like the conversation. I don't know. Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I honestly hadn't thought about that. I just made a note about it though, so I'm going to include that when we email them about the event. So that's great. Yeah, thanks.
Senator Laughlin.
I don't know if I missed the date, or was there a date for the Coffee with a Cop yet?
No, so we're looking, I just got a chance to discuss it with them tonight, and we're going to have to email the department about that, but we're looking at the week after spring break, so it's really just going to depend on officer availability and what their schedules look like, how we can get, the max amount of people there to visit with the student body. So I will have that by next week, though.
Are there any other questions for the chair's report? Oh, Senator Morgan.
Not necessarily a question, but just a suggestion. I would highly recommend that you have Officer Brandon Dorian there.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, we move into Section 7, appointments, starting with Item A, SB-61-073, appointing the Student Fees Committee members. Does the author wish to speak to this bill?
Okay, so putting those student fee committee applications back out, we got a handful of engineering. Actually, they were all engineering applicants, and one qualified for out of state as well. So that's why we only have 2 opposed to 4. So I'll be nominating Marvelous Charles to the position of out-of-state representative and Alex Wilborn to the engineering representative. Both had really great applications and had a clear understanding of what the student fees was meant to do. So I feel confident that they will be valuable members and add a different opinion to this group. Are there any questions?
Senator Laughlin.
Is there a reason they could not be here tonight, or is this something they usually don't speak on?
Yeah, so I invited them here tonight. One told me that he had a prior commitment that he had to go to. The other one, I hadn't gotten an email back. I know last time, I think there was only one person who wasn't a senator who came to the meeting. So for committees, it's not as common that, they come and show up to speak to their nomination. One of them is here? Is someone here? Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't. Okay, you can come on up and speak to your nomination or answer any questions if there are any. I did not see you back there. I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Alex Wilburn. I guess I'm the engineering representative of the Student Finance Committee. If you guys got any questions, you want me to talk about myself, or?
Senator Balzer.
Was there a prior application that made you not able to attend to the training for this Student Fees Committee today, and do you plan on making that up in the future?
Yes, so I do plan on having a meeting with Stella at a future date. We have yet to decide what date and time for that. The prior commitment was just a project that had to be attended for, so I couldn't really skip that project.
Senator Laughlin.
Why did you want to be on the Student Fees Committee?
So, being my senior year, I want to be very involved with the university, and I felt like that wasn't something that I really did when I first joined here, and so I just wanted to leave like a lasting impression, just one last hurrah before I graduated.
Senator Balzer.
As a member of this committee, you kind of represent the entire College of Engineering, which is quite a lot of people. Do you have your ear to the ground with this community? Do you have a way that you can contact with them directly? How close are you with your fellow constituents of College of Engineering?
Are you speaking of classmates or just people do I know? What do you mean? What do you classify as constituents?
The whole college, so just classmates, classes, professors. Just how close are you with that college?
Yeah, so I'm in constant contact with my department head about every single week. I'm also very close with all my classmates that I'm with. I'm knowing most of the people of my graduating class, as well as like other friends that are not within the College of Aerospace. So just other majors that are engineering as well.
Are there any other questions for the nominee? All right, seeing none, thank you for speaking. We will now be moving into the debate period. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate on this bill? Senator Berth.
Got to turn it on first. So I'll be speaking in favor. I've known Marvelous Charles for a while. He definitely brings energy and enthusiasm to everything he does, and I'm happy to see him on this.
Senator King.
Well, I don't know Marvelous Charles, but after having listened to Alex Wilburn, I think it's very respectable that he would want to leave the college with a lasting impression that would come from the student fees. I do think that he would do a very good job, and I'm happy to. I hope that we all vote yes for him.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate on this bill? Seeing none, we will now be moving into the voting period. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. SB-61-073 passes by a majority vote of the Senate.
Question of privilege. President Rao, could you zoom in on the bill next time? That way the people in the gallery can see it.
Yes, sir. All right, and so now we will be moving into item B, SB-61-074, appointing the positions of scholarship committee member. Does the author wish to speak to this bill? I know you're technically the author, but...
I'm going to defer this to Andrew.
Simply put, this is for the scholarship committee. I have the utmost confidence in Senators Huser and Akhtar, and they've shown quite a bit of involvement in SGA so far, and I'm sure that they'll make excellent recommendations for the scholarships.
Are there any questions for the author at this time? Seeing none, we will now be moving into the debating period. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate? Senator Entz.
Okay, so I would love to vouch for both of these people. They are both hardworking, very diligent, and good-natured, and I believe that they will do a wonderful job on this committee, doing the best they can. So I'm voting in favor.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate on this bill? All right, seeing none, we will now be moving into the voting period. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. SB-61-074 has passed by a majority vote of the Senate. Moving past Section 8, unfinished business, into Section 9, new business, we go into item A, FB-61-040, individual funding request. Does the author wish to speak to this bill?
Yeah, so I actually was not here last week because I was at a conference, so I'll defer to one of my Budget and Finance Committee members for these two individuals because they were actually there.
Surprise, I'm going to be the one who's deferred. So first one's Mohammed. He's presenting research at the International Conference on Industry Engineering Management Systems. That's the name of the conference, talking about globalization in that context. His research is over the analysis of what makes students in high school choose colleges, and he uses programs and scientific research to determine that kind of like areas of why certain people choose certain decisions. And it's super, super relevant to WSU as a university to determine what makes us appealing to an incoming freshman from any high school background, and he's been working on it for a while. He's a PhD student. We also have Herman. He's going to the same conference, in fact. They, in fact, shared laptops. It's pretty cool. There's a direct quote from what he's developing. There's a direct quote. Energy-efficient dynamic job scheduling on single machine under dynamic pricing constraint considering earliness and tardiness penalty. If you didn't understand that, I don't blame you, but he really did. And basically it's discussing optimal times to ensure multitasking and proper delivery schedules in a factory-like atmosphere. He actually showed off a program to us that he himself developed. It was extremely impressive. He had a super high passion for this kind of work. This is that kind of technical work that can actually change businesses on a fundamental productive level. It's super cool that they're both going to this, and having two representatives at the BSU going to this conference would be great for us. I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions on the bill? Seeing none, we will now move into the debating period. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate on this bill? Seeing none, we will now move into the voting period. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. FB-61-040 has passed by a majority vote of the Senate. Moving into item B, FB-61-041, organizational funding request. Does the author wish to speak to this bill?
So this one I can speak to because I'm a part of the group. So Asian Student Conference is requesting $950 to attend the Midwest Asian American Student Union Conference, also known as MASU. ASC has attended this conference for the past 15 years, and this conference emphasizes political, social, and cultural issues in the Asian Pacific Islander Desi American group, also known as APIDA. And basically this conference is just your normal, has personal development, has workshops, has networking opportunities, and this group will be going to Boulder, Colorado for this conference.
Are there any questions for the author, Senator Brumley?
I know that our ASC held Masu X, is that right? Will they be getting like any opportunity to kind of like highlight like the success of that event at this upcoming one, to kind of like highlight how well WSU did?
So the conference itself doesn't really have any opportunities for WSU to do that unless we apply for certain things. So Asian Student Conference, it has applied for the Board of Advisors Award, and Masu X, the conference that the ASC hosted, was a part of that application. On top of that, maybe at opening ceremonies, they might mention that Wichita State was, one of the schools that hosted a Masu X. So potentially at opening and closing ceremonies, that would be something that WSU would be noticed for.
Are there any other questions for the author at this time? Seeing none, we will now be moving into the debating period. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate on this bill? Senator Balzer?
I'm going to be voting in favor of this bill. Surprise. So just to quell any notions, even if they haven't even been addressed, Stella is a part of this group. She wasn't part of this Budget and Finance meeting. We, Budget and Finance Committee members, handle this ourselves without kind of her judgment, and due to their very high level of involvement in WSU, their natural ability of being able to understand the budgetary concept, the quality of the meeting that they're going to, and they're just overall naturally pretty charismatic folks. That's why we decided to vote on them. So they very much earned their right to deserve the money that they've given, that we're asking for.
Senator Brumley?
I will also be voting in favor of this. Wichita State's Asian Student Conference rocks, in short. I think they did a wonderful job on the conference. Their programming is always on par. We always know when it's happening. And I think they're consistently putting in that extra effort, so it makes sense for them to go to a conference like that, so that way they can be highlighted as much as possible. Just a reminder, we want our really awesome orgs to be able to go do really awesome things. So I urge you all to vote in favor as well.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate? Seeing none, we will now move into the voting period. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. FB-61-041 has passed by a majority vote of the Senate. Now moving into item C, FB-61-042 auxiliary funding request. Does the author wish to speak to this bill?
Yes. Okay. So last week when we passed this, I actually made a mistake. So on one of the line items for lodging, they requested a total of $800 some. I put $200 and then forgot that they're staying there for 3 nights. So that funding bill was my mistake, but our procedure for that is you already voted on allocating them a certain amount of money, so what we have to do is we have to vote on a new allocation, but we presented it last week. It's the same group. It's just more nights at a conference that I mistakenly forgot to put on the bill.
Are there any questions for the author at this time? Seeing none, we will now be moving into the debating period. Senator Laughlin? Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate? Seeing none, we will now be moving into the voting period. All those in favor?
For the motion to pass by unanimous consensus.
Are there any objections to pass by unanimous consensus? Seeing none, FB-61-042 has passed by unanimous consent of the Senate. All right, so moving into Section 11, remarks and announcements. So this month, this meeting, we are doing Senator of the Month, which is not something that we've been doing consistently, but it's something we've done in the past, and it's something that I felt like was deserved for this month. The senator who we have for Senator of the Month is someone who is very busy, both in school and in her work. and at the same time still manages to do a lot of great things as a senator and as a committee chair, is always working to ensure that there's all sorts of stuff that she's got going on and that she's working on and different events that she's doing. And of course, the art show this week was a huge success from what I've heard and was an excellent programming effort done by her and her committee. And so with that being said, I can now announce Senator Enns as our Senator of the Month for February 2019.
So I just wanted to do a brief clarification. Matt Kelly got in contact with me, so I'm just going to read his message. He just said, hey, I just wanted to clarify there was no lawsuit against the Sunflower, just a complaint to the university that was ruled baseless. I was told it was a lawsuit. Apparently it wasn't. They thought it would turn into a lawsuit. So I wanted to make that correction just so y'all weren't confused. So no lawsuit. Thumbs up.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in remarks and announcements? Senator Laughlin?
Yeah, there's several things, but on Monday there's a bunch of ways that we can support our students. I know that Halo is doing a salsa night. They're also teaching merengue and a bunch of different Latinx dances. So go and support them. It'll be at 7 p.m. I'm not sure on location, but I'll put it in the Discord when I do find out. And then there's also Monday at 4:30. I believe it's a room in the RSC. Same thing, I'll put in the Discord. But there's a Afro-Asian and Latinx experiences, like somebody coming to speak on experiences that way. So it'd be good for us to go out and support them.
Senator Brumley?
Okay, so a few things. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who came out to Buffalo Wild Wings last night. Again, that was for our philanthropy week for ICT SOS. We ended up raising about $175 for them within the 4 days of our campaign. So thank you very, very much. I believe the the fresh start bags cost less than $20. So that $175 does go a long way. So thank you for that. I know all of us are very multifaceted, have a lot of different organizations we're a part of, so make sure we're supporting each other in that. With that, I spoke to a few members of BSU. They just finished up their conference that they did get SGA monies from. So they all had a great time, and I know that there were multiple scholarship opportunities for them there. No matter the outcome of how those scholarships go, they still had the opportunity to apply for them, and I think that's what matters, is that when we help people get to these conferences, it really does open up doors for them. Many of them have commitments tonight, so they were not able to come and thank everyone and talk about their experiences, but it sounds like it went amazing, so I just want to thank everyone again for voting in favor of that, because it seemed to be a really, really cool opportunity for them.
Senator Wayne?
Okay, so on this Thursday, it's Give Back Fair, hosted by Community Service Board. It's from 3:30 to 5, and then we have like a companies, they do buy one, get one free to like children in need, that kind of company. Like right here, you're gonna learn about them, you're gonna get a whole bunch of like free stuff. So if you guys have time, stop by. Also, the same day from 11 to 1, it's a silent auction hosted by Alternative Spring Break Group class. So they have a silent auction going, so try to like support their like reduce their funds for going to Washington D.C. in spring break. Thank you.
Senator Berth?
Excuse me. So I mentioned it last time, but March 21st, the Student Veterans Organization is having a barbecue. We're really trying to push the word out early this time so we can maximize the amount of submissions for the competition that's going. It's going to be one of the, I'm going blank on the word, category, thank you, is ribs, and then you have beef and pork, and then you have the alternatives such as vegetarian and the like. But those submissions for those dishes will be handled through Shocker Sync on our page. There's a form that you can fill out. There's also an additional form if you wanted to volunteer to help serve food or other miscellaneous things with that event. If you are going to be serving food, we do require a food handler's license, so if you don't have one, get with us. We can give you the link to get you one. That is going to be, again, on the 21st from 11:30 to 1:30. We may extend the time if we have a lot of submissions. We don't want to waste food. And that's going to be on the RSC, either the patio or the lawn just right outside here.
Senator James.
I actually had a question for Senator Berth. Can I do that? Ask him a question. Do you have like a flyer, or is this a word of mouth type thing?
So as far as I know, the flyer should have been pushed out yesterday, but I think there was a delay in the graphic. But I'll get with that, and they should be coming around soon.
Senator Zacharias.
So, as we all know, the referendum starts on Monday. I have actually been talking to a few of my professors. They're allowing me to use the first 10 minutes of each class to let students know how to vote on the referendum. And if we can do that, I don't have any classmates that overlap, so that's at least from the 3 teachers out of 5 that allowed me to do that, 90 students. So that worked. So I'm just encouraging you all to do something.
Senator Morgan.
This is for Senator Berth. Will there be hot links?
If you bring them.
Senator Laughlin.
I realized I forgot to mention, earlier I met with some Sigma Delta Pi people, but one of the gals was talking about an event next Thursday, March 7th. Focus is going to Topeka, and they're going to be talking to, be learning how students can speak to our representatives. So if anybody's interested in that, I have Gabby's information that you can email her if you wanted to go and be involved in Focus and learn how to talk to your respective representatives in the state. So come talk to me.
Senator Mounts.
This is your friendly weekly reminder to turn in your senator hours tonight at 11:59.
I mean, I was going to do that, but that's cool. That's all right. Are there any other senators wishing to speak? Senator King.
I am currently trying to get to where the date is, but Farmhouse is having a philanthropy event sometime in April. It will be at North Rock Lanes, and I think it's for the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society, and I think all of the proceeds from that will be going to them. If I can find it on the calendar, I will tell you guys, but it is in April, so I'll speak on it whenever it's closer. Just thought I'd tell you guys about it.
All right. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in remarks and announcements? Senator Khan.
Hello. So this is more of like a personal announcement. So today I passed my citizenship test for America. And it happened this morning, so if you didn't know, please don't fight. Also, yeah, in April is my oath ceremony, so just saying that. And so if you have any questions, you can ask later. Century 2, some Friday in April. Oh, wow. I love that. Thank you. Bye.
Treasurer Yang.
So this is for everyone. On top of going to that, you should also go to the April 26th SGA end of the year banquet. Happens every single year. It's just for outgoing senators and outgoing cabinet, different administrators that have helped us out. We'll update you, obviously, as time goes on, but April 26th, it's a Friday, and that's at the Marcus Welcome Center.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yes.
We'll take more questions as the time goes on, but
Senator Brumley, do you still have? No. Okay. Senator King.
Okay, so I do have a date and time for that, for the philanthropy event. It is April 7th at 6 p.m. at North Rock Lanes. I'll speak on it in probably another 2 weeks to remind people if they wanted to go. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in remarks and announcements? Senator Martin.
I have my voice recital on April 14th. Trust me, you do not have to come, but I'm just putting it out there. I don't know the time yet.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, we will now adjourn with a silent roll call.